You're listening to the Final Say Radio Show, a Rappaport Media production, with your host Brett Rappaport and co-host John Rappaport.
Now, in just a minute, we're bringing on a good friend of ours. And by the way, our producer comes from the great state of Texas, and we have a congressman from the great state of Texas joining us. And Congressman Louie Gohmert.
Here goes the neighborhood.
It's great to see you, by the way.
It's great to see you. It's great to be with you. That's even better.
I love coming to CPAC, and I saw you walking by, and I asked my producer to come grab you, and we're very thankful.
Well, you were the only thing really happening here on Radio Row. You had such a huge crowd when I came by a while ago. This is great.
Well, Congressman, we were busy working all day. I have a personal favor to ask you.
Okay. I can't help you with a White House tour. I'm sorry.
I'm willing to, by the way, I'd be willing to pay my own way. No, I want you to lend some spine to some of the other folks that you're going to be passing by in the halls in the near future.
I've been lobbying to secretly add some calcium to our water supply up there. But anyway, we got some great people with some great backbones, and we've got some others that are always worried that we may be doing the wrong thing.
Well, you're from Texas, so you know you always have to herd the strays, right?
Whether you consider David Crockett from Tennessee or Texas, one of the early stories my mother would read was about David Crockett, and his daddy would always say, make sure you're right, then go ahead. Of course, as an adult, I came to really appreciate more Davy Crockett's comments there after he got defeated for Congress. If you remember that famous line, you can all go to hell, I'm going to Texas. Yeah, so anyway.
Well, we were celebrating the anniversary of Texas, and Beatrice was reading quotes last week of some of the great Texans and Texas independence.
Yeah, March 6th.
It was absolutely fantastic quotes, and I'd love to just walk around here and read some of them out loud.
Well, actually, March 6th was the when the Alamo fell, but yeah.
Anyway, Congressman,
and April 21st is the day San Jacinto battle took place and Texas won independence.
Right now, we don't have. Well, there's no good news coming from Washington. We have good news. We have a pope, which is good, but looking at our problems right now, looking at the election's over, we're back to work. We see Obamacare being implemented. Mm-hmm. We see the White House or certain members of the Democratic Party calling for another $1 trillion plus in tax increases. Mm-hmm. What say you?
I'm getting more depressed just sitting here, I'm telling you. But, I mean, we got to keep fighting. William Wilberforce got slavery outlawed, but it took him 48 years. And if he hadn't gotten that done, England would have been in worse trouble. So it was the right thing to do when you know you're right. And, of course, our problems aren't near anything like the scourge of slavery. So we just have to be diligent. We keep pushing. But one of the things I keep trying to educate our other members on is we're still playing on the playground under the rules that were put in place by the most liberal Congress until Pelosi got the gavel, and that's back after Watergate. They set up committee structures. They got CBO to score bills using rules that will prevent us from ever really having assistance from accurate scoring. There are just so many things that they set in place to keep conservatives from trying to get the country back on the right track. So we need to do some reorganization. We need to get back to actually appropriating where we have line items. We make sure that earmarks are not something that will be abused because, of the great oversight, but we've got to get back to line items. It's depressing. People all across America say, well, how is the president getting away? Where does he get all this money to give $1 billion here, $1 billion there to this company, to this solar company that's going bankrupt? Well, unfortunately, kind of a perfect storm. We're not appropriating other than just continuing resolutions with big sacks of cash. And the president has all this money to reward his cronies. We got to fix that thing.
Congressman, looking ahead towards the end of the month, we have the next big crisis coming.
And one crisis to another, isn't it?
Well, a bill was passed in the House to try to remedy that. There's
right.
language in the Senate moving ahead that I think is probably going to coincide with the House language, and hopefully. But when will so maybe we'll get through March and get to April and maybe to May or whenever. But when is this going to end? When is the government going to right itself and get back to having budgets that make sense, numbers that make sense, get out of this 10-year economic projection nonsense that's never right, and just get back to like some fundamental meat and potatoes balanced budget talk?
It will happen as soon as we have enough people who will stand firm, say we're not going to let you take this thing down the toilet, and that they're more concerned about doing the right thing than about winning their seat back. Then we'll get it turned around. People in the House keep saying, hey, we only have half of 1/3 of the government. No, we've got the most important half that appropriates every single dime that any federal entity spends. If we don't let them have it, they don't get it, they don't spend it. That's tremendous leverage. So when we get around to using the leverage, we can set this thing back on course.
That's exactly why I made.
But that gets us back to what you were talking about earlier. Helping with the spines. Stiffening those spines.
That's exactly it.
That's right.
We were just sitting here having a similar conversation, and the point I was making, I've had this conversation with a couple of congressmen recently, is it seems to me we have two very powerful mechanisms that we need to use, because the Senate may be hopeless for the immediate future.
That's right.
One is defunding, just saying if we don't fund it, it will die a natural death.
That's right. Exactly.
Number two is we have the rise of what could be just a great bulwark of governors. Okay, and this is one of the things that really, really helped the last time this country became strong again. And we have to somehow work; those two have to work together. There has to be very public, open, and assertive governance that leverages those two mechanisms.
And that is exactly what we need when you don't have Congress standing as firmly for the right as God given us to see the right. So the governors can make a huge difference. So on Obamacare, I see governors around the state around the country making a difference already. They're beginning to see, for the first time since the 17th Amendment, hey, you know what? We do have some leverage in this fight.
Well, it's funny. When you look at the Obama administration, the one thing they did brilliantly is we're going to buy all these votes, in many cases permanent voting blocks or near permanent voting blocks, the 40 years in the desert comes to mind, right? And we're going to give away all these goodies, and then we're going to make the Republicans the bad guys because you're the guy who has to come take the cookies out of the kids'
exactly, mouth. Well, and of course, when you talk about these big voting blocks, some people just assume, well, this group has always voted nearly entirely Democrat, so why even bother to make inroads? And I think that we need to be about bringing voters to see that the Republican Party is more in line with the things they believe than anyone else. I don't think there ought to be any block that we don't pursue and try to get votes from. And that a great example is that, most of the time, one group that gets, almost 100%, gives about 100% votes to Democrats is the dead. I think it's time the Republicans started getting some dead votes for a change. Why do we always have to concede? If you're dead, you're going to vote Democrat. We ought to be getting some of those votes.
I'm putting it in my will. Congressman, in New Jersey, which is...
And for the Huffington Post, I was being facetious about that.
That was a joke.
They don't get things like that very well.
New Jersey's a very blue state. Even with the governor we have, we're a very blue state. Yeah. It's crazy what goes on in my state. but I'm working with groups of people today that you wouldn't believe because they are sick and tired of what the party they've been supporting has been doing to them for so many years, and they're looking for someone to go to. And the Republicans aren't recognizing it, but someone like myself and just other activists do. And I think that over time we're going to build a little bit of head of steam and capture a group of people who are going to say, it's about time we got back to the way it used to be in the United States of America.
And seriously, there are so many groups that if we will just show them that we're not about keeping them, beholding to the big master government. We want them to be president of their company. We want them to be president someday of the country. And we want them to have independence. And we're the ones who really want them to do well. We don't want them, begging for help for the rest of their lives. When people start seeing that we are the party that wants to empower the individual regardless of race, creed, color, national origin, then we're going to take such control that it's going to be tough. It'll be there for decades.
Right. We have to fight against this thing where, the Lord giveth and Obama taketh away.
Yeah. Well, and also a media that is so heavily invested in getting one candidate, Barack Obama, elected president, that they really take umbrage at anybody that tries to point out flaws in the non-existent clothes of the emperor. So they are so protective, but at some point, and I think we're seeing it develop, people are realizing you can't trust the mainstream media.
We were just talking a little while ago about the high stakes in 2014 and how if the Democrats take back the House side, then the last 2 years.
Yeah, where would y'all like to go? Where do you think?
With my girlfriend back to Russia.
Yeah. Really?
I was thinking about New Zealand myself, but I was wondering what you thought the prospects were.
Well, but on this note, though, it is, we're kidding around about it, but it's very serious. And it's like an African man told me 2 or 3 years ago in West Africa, an elderly gentleman, wise old man. He said, we were so excited here when you elected a black president, but we have seen America get weaker and weaker. And to the world, it looks like your country's getting weaker. Please tell people in Washington, don't let America get weaker, because if you're weak, people like us, the other parts of the world, we can't expect to live in peace. It is so important that you stay strong. And that's the danger. We let this country go, then people are going to suffer around the world that depend on us, just to be good guys.
That's a great point, and we see what's transpiring right now in the Middle East, North Africa, North Korea, China.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of
they have no fear of us.
Yeah.
Look, they have no fear of us.
That's absolutely right. Congressman, we're coming up on the last few minutes of our program.
Okay, so I'll shut up so y'all can have a big bang
we'd
finish.
Love, just reminding, we'd love for you to wrap up the show with us if you have a few minutes.
Sure.
But we have some big decisions going on in Washington, but as a member of Congress and some of the good conservatives that you work with, what are you guys trying to accomplish most right now?
Well, trying to educate everyone that we can win little victories and that we need to rack them up. And the only way you can do that, though, are on bills that the Senate knows they're going to have to pass. Get things in there. I mean, get a little nick into Obamacare here, a little nick there, but get something with every must-pass bill that we send to the Senate. Don't accept anything that doesn't have some cut to Obamacare, some strengthening of our constitutional rights. Get something in every bill to help strengthen America while they're in the White House and Senate.
Will there be an adjustment to the spending cuts in the sequester, or is this just going to be?
Now, I would like to see the Department of Defense not suffer the biggest part of the sequester. I raised Cain about that a year and a half ago. That's why I told it's a terrible idea, because the super committee wasn't going to reach an agreement. They didn't. I called up and end up where we are. But now that we're here, $44 billion is a drop in the bucket as to what we should be cutting. So we don't need to be lessening the amount of what we've cut. But I sure would like to move some of that cut into other areas. Heck, let's do away with the Department of Energy. Get that back in under departments we already had. That was a new creation. I think Carter created that. He created the Department of Education siphons off for themselves. Let the states keep that where it should have been in the first place. You can make a real difference. There are all kinds of places to cut, and but we should not lessen the little bitty $44 billion that got cut.
Yep, Congressman, thank you so much for joining us.
I love
Always
being
a pleasure.